So I will let you introduce the topic and we can get started.
The LA fires, if you can believe it. We are divorce lawyers in Toronto, Canada, talking about the LA fires. So the question is, why are we talking about the LA fires? The answer is actually really important because, first of all, the tragedy is very real. It's very sad. And it was all born by Mother Nature. Of course, we can argue the sources, including global warming. But as of today, roughly 41,000 acres have been devastated by the LA fires. 25 or more people have been killed. There have been umpteen numbers of non-fatal injuries. There are dozens of people missing. And there have been roughly 12,000 homes destroyed and about 200,000 people evacuated from their homes. So what does that have anything to do with divorce? The answer is, out of those thousands of people that have been evacuated, there have been many people that were going through separation or divorce, or who were already separated and divorced. And as a result of all of the above, those people have been forced to contend with life through a natural disaster. And so we have actually, if you could believe it, had to deal with this before. We've dealt with COVID. We've dealt with Hurricane Katrina. We've dealt with other hurricanes and natural disasters in the last few years. And of course, locally, we've also dealt with SARS a number of years ago. And all of these natural disasters, whether due to climate effects or due to infection and health risks, either way, this has affected families in the thousands. So Leanne and I thought it would be a smart idea, first of all, to pay tribute to the families and the first responders in Los Angeles, some of whom, by the way, are Canadian and some of whom are from Ontario or from Canada and have traveled there in order to assist in the disaster relief. But we are very, very concerned for the plight and the life and the safety of our friends and family members in California. We are sending our prayers and our best wishes to the people that have been affected, negatively affected, hurt, injured, and traumatized by it. And God knows the trauma will last for months, if not years, into the future. And certainly social scientists and people in the mental health sphere are already talking about the years of therapy and devastation that they're going to have to deal with. But on a more immediate basis, we wanted to talk about what happens to these families when they are families of divorce and the children were going back and forth within Pacific Palisades. And now some of these families have lost their homes. Some of them have been forced to move out of state, hours away, while their parents are divorced or divorcing. And so that is the topic that Leanne and I wanted to discuss with our followers today.
Yes, and I just want to add just to what Steve said that we extend our sincere condolences to any of the people being affected by these awful fires. It is a true tragic situation, and when you're going through divorce, that for most people, or almost all people, is a very challenging time. So if you couple that with you're also in a tragic situation, you're dealing with you're losing your home, you're losing the contents of your home, all of these horrible, horrible things that people there are dealing with. And then on top of that, you're already dealing with a divorce. That's a lot for somebody to have to cope with.
And so we wanted to share with our viewers some of our prayers, our hopes, and our considerations for people going through separation and divorce. And for what it's worth, like I said, we've had some experience with this already during our years of being practicing lawyers. And so to some extent, we're reaching into our old bag of tricks in terms of how to contend with a situation. So let's just lay it out by using a fictitious set of names. Jack and Diane were living in the Pacific Palisades for years leading up to January 7th. Indeed, they split up about 2 years ago. One of them stayed in the matrimonial home. The other one moved into an apartment nearby. And the kids go back and forth. Well, as of right now, Diane's and Jack's house has burnt down. The kids' school burnt down. The kids were going back and forth between Jack and Diane, both of whom, by the way, have family in various other states. And Jack and Diane had to solve a problem extremely fast. Where do they go? What do they do? What do they do with their children? When will they see each parent? And so we thought what we would do is we would give an example of what we would do for Jack and Diane in this situation. And let me add a little bit more color to it. Jack's family is in San Francisco. Diane's family is in New York. Both of their families offered to house them. But if everybody goes to their family in New York and in San Francisco, where do the kids go? What school do they go to? When do they see the other parent? Because under the circumstances, maybe they can't all live with Jack's family or Diane's family. And so that is the real life example of what's going on to thousands of families in Southern California. And so within those divorced or divorcing families, you've got a spectrum. You've got the Jacks and the Dianes who actually are extremely cooperative. And then therefore their families are extremely cooperative in that Jack or Diane's family might say, you know what? We've got a big home. All of you come here. And yes, we recognize that you, Jack, and you, Diane, are not together. We've got separate bedrooms for you. That would be an amazing solution, of course, if the families were on board and Jack and Diane were on board, because then all of them could be in the same community and they could continue living their lives, albeit in a very tragic situation, but certainly in the same area, same community. But not everybody has that situation, or not everybody has family that offers that situation. And what would one do if Diane says, look, I'm going to San Fran, and Jack says, I'm going to New York? And that's a difficult situation. But we would certainly start with, what are the options? We would look at the options to provide safe shelter. And when I use the word safe, I'm not only referring to the physical bricks and mortars of safety, but also the emotional safety, because this is a family that is on many layers of trauma. And so the first layer of trauma is they're divorcing. The second layer of trauma is they've lost their home. The children have lost their home. The third level of trauma is they all have to leave the community. They've got to reestablish themselves on a fairly immediate and temporary basis. So we want to give this family the best advice we could so as to preserve their emotional safety and their physical safety, and at the same time start talking to them about how to reestablish themselves, where to reestablish themselves. What does this mean for parenting time, for child support, for spousal support, for property division, some of which has been burnt? So these are really trying moments, and there is not a lot of case law that says, oh, here are the 10 commandments on divorce during disaster. Doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist. We have to make it up. And that's where good counsel, good judgment, and collaboration are critical, absolutely critical.
Yeah, I really underscore the word collaboration there. When a tragedy strikes, it's the time to be collaborative, conciliatory, compassionate, all of those things. And while you may detest your former spouse, maybe you had a really high conflict separation, there's a lot of ill will between each of the parents. But in a time of tragedy, it's really important to put that aside and to be collaborative, focus on what's best for your children, and make any sort of parenting decisions from that basis. It's not a time to be opportunistic, to try and take advantage of the situation if you think you can, get something to your advantage from the other parent. It's a time to put the swords down, so to speak, and really, really try and work together. And it's interesting because as we've watched this unfold on television, one of the things we've been hearing a lot is there's been a lot of celebrities affected by these fires, and celebrities who've lost their homes. And I've heard in the news, a few examples of where divorced celebrity parents are being collaborative and helpful to one another. I know, just as one example, I had heard that with Jennifer Garner and Ben Affleck, that Ben Affleck was staying at Jennifer Garner's home with her and their children. So, that's a perfect example. Ben apparently lost his home in the fire. And so Jennifer extended her, her hospitality and compassion to him to have him stay in their home. And so, that's an example of the type of behavior that people are going to need to engage in to get themselves and their children. I mean, I can only imagine how a child would feel losing their home in a fire. They're probably going to need counseling just to deal with that. And so if their parents are adding more conflict into the situation, that's only going to further traumatize them. And so it's really, really important to put them first and cooperate and be collaborative.
So, one of the things that, again, if we were lawyers servicing the LA families who are in late stages or early stages divorce, one of the very first things that I would say, either as a lawyer or as a mediator, is we need a 3-month plan. And that 3-month plan is not going to be leveraged by one side or the other after the 3 months. There's a case in Ontario that I just recently read where during COVID, they had special needs children and they arranged it in a certain way due to COVID. And then following that, one of the parents said, okay, now it's permanent. And the judge said, no. That was an extreme situation which generated a temporary arrangement which nobody could leverage to their advantage. So that's one of the first principles that I would say to the family is whatever we do, whether it's horrible, less than horrible, modestly horrible, it's just temporary. And we would sign an agreement. And whatever the agreement said, it would start by saying, this agreement is without prejudice. It's just an agreement that's going to carry us for a period of X months. I say randomly 3 months because I'm quite certain that the state and specifically the area will become more stabilized in 3 months, but it could be 3 months plus 3 months. The next thing that I would say is what arrangement would give the children, objectively speaking, the greatest sense of temporary permanence and stability? Where would that be? Who would that be with? Grandparents, uncles, aunts, friends? Would it be in California? Would it be, in our example, in New York? And the answer really is fact specific. Where is their housing? Where is their schooling? Where is their love, compassion, and affection. And can that space or can that destination have both parents? Even not at the same house, but in the same community. It may be that Jack's family in New York have relatives or friends that could house Diane in the same community. That's not only an act of good Samaritanism, it's also a very good act in terms of being the parents, grandparents, or uncles and aunts to the children, because these children need their parents. So those are some starter examples on how to lay a legal foundation to disaster management when going through separation and divorce.
Yes. And, the key thing for everybody is to be, I think, patient with one another. And as we touched upon at the beginning of our life, there isn't a lot of case law on this. So it's something that it will be developing, just like when COVID hit, there weren't cases about, kids getting which school they going to school or going between houses because we were all confined to home. Law developed and it developed quickly. Lawyers were on it, judges were on it, and it'll be similar in this situation once the fires are under control and people start picking up their lives again. There will be people going to court, and there will be judges making decisions on these issues, and law will develop very quickly. But it'll be about common sense and compassion and what's best for the children. Those three things will be the guiding principles. Another
point that I would make is with the number of people that are escaping California, or quite frankly, even just escaping the LA region, one can argue that they've reestablished their lives in the other state, in New York or in Northern California, or maybe even in another country. Well, that certainly should not become a legal dispute in the future where someone says, well, now we're living in New York and that's our permanent residence. And then the question becomes, which court has jurisdiction over this family?
Yeah.
Can somebody start a court proceeding in the new location, New York, Northern California, another country? Is that the new legal jurisdiction for them to resolve whatever issues they cannot resolve on their own? So that's another example of where there needs to be a common sense approach, reasonableness, and of course, contemplation, because whatever deal you do now could potentially affect other factors, like which law applies, which state has control over this family.
Yeah.
Then some other issues will come out of this. For example, there are people that have lost their businesses, that have lost their incomes, that have lost their client base. And that's going to affect child and spousal support. And in fact, it may be that both parents have had their incomes devastated, but it might be that one did. And in fact, the one person that had their career or income devastated might have been the higher income earner. And the lower income earner, for whatever the reason, maybe they're a government employee, did not lose their job, did not lose their career, did not lose their business. Now, how does spousal and child support operate in that situation? If in the example that I just gave, Jack used to run a restaurant in the Palisades, and that restaurant is now gone, but Jack's restaurant used to earn for Jack $200,000 a year, and Diane used to earn $75,000 a year working for the government. Well, now Diane's got the only income in the family, and Jack might require Diane to support him as opposed to the other way around, let alone child support. This completely changes the mosaic within this family in terms of support. And then, of course, did they have insurance? Mm-hmm. Did Jack have insurance? Did Jack have insurance for fire? Did Jack have insurance for business disruption? What is Jack going to do to reestablish a career after the dust, no pun intended, settles? And so these are extremely novel and necessary conversations to occur. And I pray and I hope for the families going through this, first of all, that they find emotional and physical safety immediately. Secondly, that as life becomes more permanent and stable again, hopefully sooner than later, they do not engage in a conflictual battle over all these issues. And as all of you can see from our taglines, we're divorce lawyers, divorce strategists, we're mediators. My hope for all of you, especially those going through this, is that you connect with a peace-making professional, not a conflict-making professional, because the peace-making professional will make peace, will make solutions, and will keep what limited money, what leftover assets and income you have within the family unit, and not share it with conflict-making professionals who might stir the pot and move the family farther from a peaceful solution, which is not fair to the family, not fair to the children, not fair to their limited financial means. So, I pray and I hope for the families, the thousands of families that have been going through horrible days and nights in the last few weeks. I pray for a soft, immediate, and easy landing. And for those within that population that are going through separation and divorce, I hope you find sympathy for one another, collective sympathy, and a collective means to find a collaborative, peaceful result that brings future comfort and stability to the totality of the family unit.
And I echo your comments there, Steve. And my thoughts and prayers certainly go out to all of these people being affected by the fires. And I just hope that all of them can be compassionate, be collaborative, seek peace, don't seek to be opportunistic about this situation, and that you can put your children's best interests first and move forward in some sort of collaborative fashion. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. This is, as I said, we're using some new technology this week, so hopefully everything went smoothly on the listeners' end. If anyone has any comments or anything, they can send them to Steve or I, and we'll definitely take them into consideration for our live again next week. And we will see you back again next Wednesday with a new topic. Thanks, everyone.